Welcome to Containerized Conversations, where we try to containerize our conversation. I'm Jessica Caffarelli.
And I'm Josh Warhurst. Thanks for tuning in as we dive into some of our favorite topics, one containerized thought at a time. When I look for jobs right now, I'm looking at hybrid jobs, right?
Yeah.
I'm not looking at full on-prem, and I'm not looking at
Full on-prem.
and full remote, right? What do you call it?
I love how you put it full on-prem, like you're a server.
Full.
You're in a data center at your seat. You're full on.
What's the right term? Full in office?
In office? Yeah.
Whatever,
it's
man.
full on-prem. I'm taking it.
Okay, so in office / on-prem, hybrid, and then remote, right?
Yeah.
Most companies are basically putting this up front right now. When you look at the job, it says, oh, this is a hybrid job. A hybrid has the biggest range. Could be 2 days in the office, 3 days, 4 days. I've seen a hybrid position where it says you come into the office for 1 week a month, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a huge range there. Prior to the pandemic, I think most companies were doing everybody in the office 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe most companies in Boston, but I don't know. I feel like fully remote was getting very popular over the past few years.
Definitely, but will anybody argue that it boomed at the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're right.
Nowadays, when I look at a job in any field, right?
Yeah.
In any field, there's a work from home element,
Yeah.
right? That they kind of explain up front. Yes. Things in the DevOps field, things in cloud had a work from home element since 2005, right? I know people that have been, ever since the internet came out, had some way of working remotely.
Yeah.
And coming into the office when they had an update, right? I personally love the fact that we've moved away from totally in the office, but hybrid is kind of what I'm looking at. I don't really love fully remote, and I don't really want a job that does fully remote. But why don't we talk about the not just our preferences, but what are our thoughts on each of the different styles? So I guess we'll start with on-prem.
Yeah, on-prem. So, I come from an era where I had to be in the office 5 days a week, right? So I was used to it. And one of the management styles that I got used to, it's this idea of managing by walking around.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a book on this, and I think I think it's Abraham Lincoln. He's like a
vampire hunting.
He talks about how he would go around to the troops in the army, and he would walk around and he would talk to them, and he would figure out the problems they were having before there was problems. The idea was that you went and talked to your troops and you caught them when they were just fresh having a problem and it wasn't festering. And by doing that, he was able to effectively be a leader because he was able to stomp out these problems right away. And I think that's something that's really hard to do if you're fully remote. And when you're in the office, it's very easy to walk around, talk to people, and see people who are upset, people who aren't upset.
Yeah. You can just feel it from a mile away. You see somebody who's very frustrated and you say, oh, we have a problem. If you're on Slack, that person might give terse responses. It just might be how they talk.
And
right?
That's the problem. Yeah, you don't know through the Slack messages if that's just who they are.
Yeah, or you might even talk to them and you do a team meeting over video chat.
Yeah.
And, the person has their camera off.
Yeah.
And you're missing every single cue that they're giving, that they're actually very frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think a lot of things are easier when you have an office presence. It's a lot easier to judge emotions. It's a lot easier to manage people. It's a lot easier to work with teammates. It's a lot, as a tech lead, it's a lot easier for me to see when someone is spinning their tires on an issue and maybe they don't want to raise their hand just yet, but you're like, well, you've been spinning on this for maybe 2 or 3 hours. Maybe I can help you.
Yeah. So in the office is sort of the default. I think a lot of people have had that experience of thinking that's just the normal way and everything else is an aberration. It's a new way of thinking about the office culture. Being in office, you can see everybody. You can ask them questions. Being in office has the benefit of team members physically being in the same space and bumping into each other, right? Whether that's in the lunchroom, in the bathroom, just outside. Like there's a lot of natural ways that people are going to bump into each other that we've kind of figured out. And you can do other things with like the office that you can't do with other types, right? For instance, like hybrid, even hybrid doesn't get this fully. If you have an office where you arrange it where the teams are set up so that they're actually interacting with teams that are near them. We actually had this at our company where we had like the mechanical team was right next to the electrical team, and the electrical team was next to the software team. All those people were sitting next to the groups that you might overhear their conversations and realize, hold on, our thing relates to their thing, and now we can have a conversation about it. On-prem has all these benefits. It has the negative effects of all the dumb stuff that you have to do, the commuting. The fact that people might be tired because, again, they were just part of like an hour and a half commute before they got to work. There's the people who have to leave really early to get their kids because that's the only way that it makes sense.
That's the positives of working remotely, fully remote, is you can basically dictate your hours. In a very well-oiled, fully remote organization, it really doesn't matter what hours you work. It really just matters what you get done within a day or a week.
So
And
American.
I do think that that is really helpful. Being fully remote and just having my child at the same time gave me the freedom to kind of hang out with my child and do things I wouldn't have been able to do if I was going into the office every day.
We both had our first child at the same time.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. The fact that you can have some time where you say, I'm working, but right out of the corner of my eye, like my daughter's like playing on a mat, right? And she's not moving too much.
Yeah.
Maybe when she was like 3 months, she needs attention, but like I can actually do work. I can't bring her to the office. That would be ridiculous. The amount of setup too. If you're like, oh, I'm bringing her to the office, and I'll just bring 20 diapers. I'm going to bring her a bunch of wipes. It just doesn't make sense. But from working from home, you can totally have that dynamic. I've talked about being in the office. You can use that extra 5 minutes between a meeting to go and talk to somebody and grab a coffee, whatever. At home, you have the ability to use that extra 5 minutes to, put some clothes in the laundry, right? Things that might be pressing you and making you more stressed at work, you might be able to say, I can get that out of the way. Clear up the mental to-do list and focus on work. The negative thing, I think, going back from fully remote and fully on-prem, one of the biggest differences is when you're working in the office and you leave the office, you kind of mentally leave that space.
Yeah.
And you can say, when I'm at home, I'm with my family. And then when I'm at the office, I'm doing work. Yeah. The biggest pain that I have with fully remote work is that I'm kind of always right next to the office. I'm always thinking about work, even in the middle of dinner. Even like my computer, I'll be sitting in bed and I can see my computer and I'm like, I could be doing a project right now. Yeah. I should be sleeping, right?
Yeah. But like, I'm not sleeping, it bleeds so into why not? Just hop on for 10 minutes, 3 hours later.
4 a.m, the sun is like barely dipping over the horizon.
That's a technique that I've heard. There are people who don't have the space to do this, but one of the techniques for being fully remote is that you have an office and a desk and a workstation that's just for working. And when you're not working, you're not there.
Right.
And
so like you have it in the basement. Yeah. And the commute is you walk down to the basement.
Yeah.
And the only thing in this basement is the office. It's not your washer dryer.
Yeah. Even your personal computer. Nothing else is down there. It's just when you go down those stairs, you go to work. And when you come up those stairs, you're leaving work. But that's the thing. It's like, even for me, I don't have the space to do that. Like, my hobby space is also my workspace. So you're always there.
A coworker of mine also did the shed thing, right? Where they walked out to their shed.
Yep.
And they ran the Ethernet and all the power to their shed so they could work out of the shed.
Yeah. I do have a shed. I have a shed
too, but that shed would fall apart.
Yeah.
Like if it was raining, I think the water gets in. There's bees in
Yeah.
there. It's
There's,
not the
yeah.
best work environment.
No. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely a good idea too. But then you need the money to buy a new shed because, at least for us, we don't have a good shed to do that for. So
Yeah. So
I think they call those he sheds or he and she sheds. I think they call those where
he
you
shed, she
actually,
shed down by the seashore or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
But yeah, it's like, it's not a tool shed. It's like a shed you actually physically hang out in.
I like the concept. I think for me though, being in office is I actually really love the fact that hybrid is a thing. I know people who have like hour and a half commutes. And if you can say, hey, I'm gonna get rid of that commute for even 1 or 2 days a week and use that extra time at home, that's great. But I think it depends where you are in your career as well. If you're a junior developer, being able to go and talk to people physically right next to you is a really good benefit of being in the office. I think
Yeah.
when you're a senior developer and you're more focused on like let's figure out some tasks, let's figure out how we're going to optimize the system, you might find that that's really good from home. I don't know. I like hybrid because there's some flexibility to do a little bit of both, right? I think we all agree that being in the office has some benefits for a lot of people. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people and a lot of companies. And being remote has some benefits. And so being able to dictate, you know what, this week I'm doing 2 days a week. I'm doing 3 days a week, not mandating it. The only thing that's a negative is that you might actually get situations with hybrid where if you want that full benefit of people being in the office and you say, hey, you know what, you can come in 3 days a week, you might have two people who never
Yeah.
come in the same day, right? Never meet each other, even though they really need to meet each other, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other negative thing is that a lot of time meetings are, I think, more effective in person. That's my hot take of the day. Meetings are more effective in person. What you get with people that do this hybrid thing is that some people are in the meeting in person and some people are taking the meeting remotely. And the people who are in the meeting room itself are often the people who actually make the decisions. The
Yeah.
people who are there remotely occasionally get in a good word or two, but they really are much less effective. That's probably one of the worst things about the sort of hybrid thing.
And I think that is the toughest part about hybrid. With hybrid work, you get the best and worst of both worlds. You know, when you're in the office, there's a lot of hallway conversations where
Mm-hmm.
decisions are made in those quick hallway conversations. And so if you weren't around for those times or you weren't in the office for those times, you were left out of those decisions. And you know, that's the toughest part too. So what it sounds like is there's no good option. They all
No,
have
no.
their ups and downs,
Yes.
and
There's no
you have to,
perfect situation,
yeah.
right? I think you figure out what works for you. But when you talk about fully remote, you're actually broadening your skill pool to not just the geographical area.
That's true.
You're saying, hey, our talent pool is everybody.
That's true.
Anybody could work in this company, and it might give you new talent versus
Mm.
if you say, you know what, we need people in the office. And that means you need to live somewhere kind of nearby. So you might be limiting your talent pool by doing in office, right? Hybrid is kind of arguably in that situation the worst because you're saying we're still limiting it to people who are nearby, you know, and we're not getting the benefit of the people who are, you
Yeah.
know, the talent that exists, say, across the
Yeah.
country. So,
Yeah. Yeah. The other nice thing about fully remote is you could also hire in different time zones. So if you
Mhm.
have a more, support focused job, then you don't need to be on call 24/7. You just have to be on call during working hours. And if you plan it out enough and stagger it enough, then there's always someone on call during working hours, you know?
Yep. I don't think there's a best answer here. I
No.
think that for most companies, they need to figure out what works for them. For most individuals, they need to figure out what companies they want.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to go fully remote because I like that human interaction. I like going into an office space where I can say, hey, while I'm here, I can focus entirely on work and not on other things in my life.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you know, I've thought about I want to move back to Japan at some point.
Yeah.
And I would love to work fully remote for an American company while working in Japan. And so
Yep.
I need to figure out this remote thing at some point to make that situation work out.
And that was our containerized conversation. I'm Jesse Caffarelli.
I'm Josh Warhurst. Have a great night.